Welcome to the Plant Trainers Podcast, where we're helping people improve their quality of life through nutrition and fitness. And now, your hosts, nutrition and wellness coaches, international speakers, Adam and Shoshana Chaim.
Hey, I'm Adam Chaim.
And I'm Shoshana Chaim, and we are Propelled by Plants.
Today we bring to you episode 465, Easy Plant-Based Cooking for Two with Chef Lei Shishak.
In this episode of the Plant Trainers Podcast, we talk with Chef Lei about easy plant-based cooking for two. We discuss shopping, pantry staples, meal prep. You're going to come away with great ideas for your next bowl night as well. You're going to love this episode whether you're newly married, flying solo, got a roommate, empty nesters, or if you're a large crowd, you could still double and triple all the recipes or make leftovers. But don't worry, you're going to come away hungry.
Chef Lei is the author of multiple cookbooks and a CIA-trained chef with a certificate in plant-based nutrition from the Colin Campbell Center for Nutrition Studies. After heading pastry kitchens at notable LA and Orange County restaurants, Chef Lei founded Sugar Blossom Bake Shop in San Clemente, California, and has been featured in People, Riviera Magazine, Sunset Magazine, LA Daily News, and many more media outlets. So many great recipes in this episode. You're going to love them. Stick around.
Hey everyone. Now it's more important than ever to stay close and connected to us as we're going to be making some changes here at Plant Trainers. So please head over to planttrainers.com and get our plant-based comfort foods recipe book for free. That's a $14.99 value just by signing up for our newsletter so that you can know what changes are, because we want to make sure that we stay in touch.
And now for a moment of gratitude.
I am so grateful for opportunity. I was able to go down to San Antonio, Texas, and play catchball to represent Maccabee Canada, and it was just an incredible experience meeting women from all across North America and getting to play in so many matches in 3 days. It was great.
And I am grateful that you came home and you are back to help out with the family, because it's tough being alone with the kids and the dog. And
they call it solo parenting.
Yeah, kudos to all you single parents out there.
Chef Lei, thank you so much for joining us on the Plant Trainers Podcast today.
Thank you so much for having me.
We're very excited to talk to you and to leave here hungry. I'm actually hungry now, so that's not a good thing. But before we get into all things cooking, we wanted to know if you had a moment of gratitude to share with us and the listeners.
I do. Well, the first thing I thought of today was that I'm just so thankful for this rain that we've been getting here in Southern California. Many people may or may not know California is primarily in drought. So we've had a good amount of rain, I'd say, this past month. So I've been very, very thankful for that.
Good. I'm glad. And I hope intermittently that it keeps up throughout the rest of the year.
I do too. Yeah. So it's tough. California is not really built for these like massive downfalls of rain. We will take whatever we can get, but yeah, I hope it spreads out a little bit too.
And why don't you tell us a little bit about how you found plant-based living and what it's done for you in maybe many different ways?
Yeah, sure. So it all started in 2020. I had just sold my bakery, which I had run for about 10 years. And prior to that, I had worked in kitchens across Los Angeles and Orange County as a pastry chef. So I had many, many years of standing on my feet, working in hot kitchens, bending, like reaching for things and just, very physical jobs. So I was dealing with a tremendous amount of inflammation, especially in my elbows and my wrists. And it was incredibly painful. I was wearing compression bands and, using these ointments and taking these pain medications. And it got to the point where the pandemic hit. I sold my bakery and I had free time. And I was like, this is the perfect time to try and change my diet, change what I'm eating, change what I'm putting into my body, and really try and fix my body with food. And so I started doing some research on different ways of eating, and plant-based just kept popping up, and it just sounded so doable. And so I did get my certificate in plant-based nutrition and just did a lot of research online, a lot of YouTubing, and just started incorporating more plants into my diet.
That's fabulous. So did you find that, how long did you find until that inflammation really started going away and helping you?
I'd say within 3 to 6 months, I really felt a difference. And, it was gradual. It wasn't like I, 100% went, full on vegan in one day, and I'm still, let me just say, I'm not full on vegan now. I probably eat about 70% plant-based foods. And I just slowly started incorporating more vegetables onto my plate. And my husband joined me on the journey as well. And I'd say, yeah, in about 3 to 6 months, I really started feeling a difference.
And did you still continue to have oil in your diet, or did you eliminate oil as well?
So I continued to have oil in my diet. I did as you know, I have a cookbook out on plant-based cooking, and I did develop some of the recipes in the cookbook are oil-free because I know that that's definitely a component of plant-based eating. But myself, I do still eat and cook with oil.
Did you notice certain foods that affected you in a negative way versus the foods that made you feel better?
I know a lot of people talk about, dairy foods, and I think cutting that out really made a big difference for me. So I'd say that was something that I noticed the most.
Yeah, a lot of people react differently to certain foods, but most people have intolerances to dairy or it causes inflammation. And when they remove dairy, they find that results happen a lot faster. And some people will see the difference a couple of weeks in, some will see it a month in, 2 months. It's really different for each person. Everyone's their own body. So,
right.
But it's interesting that the overall effects are very similar across the board.
Correct. Yeah. Yeah. And like I said, like my transition to plant-based was slow. So that's probably also why it took maybe 3 to 6 months. Maybe I took a little longer than most people, but yeah, it was a slower transition for me, but I definitely felt the long-term effects.
And I think that's important. I think if you're going to take your time to get there, but it's going to last a lot longer, that's what's most important. And I think when most people feel better, they want to eat that way and they want to, fill their plates with more veggies and all of that.
Oh, totally. Yeah. I usually spend my Sundays meal prepping for the week. And by meal prepping, what I consider meal prepping for my life is I basically just go buy all the vegetables that I want to buy for the week. And it's just, washing them, trimming them, cutting them, having them pre-diced, not cooked, but pre-diced and prepped to be cooked for the week. And just when I see all the different colorful vegetables on the counter, it just gets me excited about eating them during the week.
So I'm glad you brought that up, the meal prepping, because your book is Easy Plant-Based Cooking for Two. And very often we talk about batch cooking and prepping things in advance and busy schedules with, soccer practices and all kinds, and how to feed your big family. But now we're kind of narrowing it down to saying, okay, you're an individual, or it's you and a roommate, or you and a partner, and how are we going to cook small, but still make good food often, not spend a lot of time doing it. So instead of doing big batches of rice in the Instant Pot and big batches of beans, you're spending your time cleaning all the ingredients so that when it's time to cook, you could chop, clean and speed up your time that way.
Correct. And I also measure out ingredients. So if I know that I'll probably have rice later in the week, I'll just measure out the rice, and maybe this is a little OCD, but I measure out the rice, I measure out even the water, and I just keep it already pre-measured and ready to go. And it just, it just makes cooking so much more enjoyable. But yeah, just to mention about batch cooking, I do talk about it in my book, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with batch cooking, especially if you have other people, if you're in a household of more than two, then it would make sense to batch cook grains for sure, like a big batch of quinoa earlier in the week. In this case, where this book is really focused on small batch cooking, it's easy enough where, you don't necessarily have to cook a big batch because you're probably going to get tired of eating rice 5 days the week. So
that sounds so funny, because batch cooking to me sounds like you're making a whole bunch of stuff at once, but you're saying small batch cooking. That means you're making a little bit of a lot of things. Like, is that right? You're making a little bit of a lot of things all at once?
Yes, but a lot of different things.
A lot of different things. And I guess it's a term, I guess it's the term that people understand. Batch cooking means, to me, it means I'm taking a batch of my time and dedicating it towards prepping, right?
It's a good way.
Yeah, I mean, I mean, with shopping on Sunday and then coming home and prepping the vegetables, I mean, it's a good two hour. I'd say for me, it's probably about a good solid 2 hours. But it saves me a lot of time during the week when I'm working full time and I'm tired by 5 o'clock and I just want to whip up a quick stir fry. So it's really helpful in that respect.
And when you measure it out, do you measure your portion sizes? So there's not going to be any leftovers from the meals, or what? How does that work?
So I only measure out typically the grains. So like if the farro, the brown rice, the quinoa, I'll measure those out. But as far as the vegetables, I don't. I'll just prep, if I bought 4 to 5 carrots at the grocery store, I'll just dice them all, peel them, dice them, and just keep them in a container. And then I'll just pull out what I need during the week.
All right, that makes sense. That makes sense completely. But do you have leftovers?
Sometimes I do, and there's nothing wrong with leftovers. I actually, my husband and I love leftovers. It's just that we don't like leftovers the 3rd, 4th, and 5th day as well. We're happy to have leftovers the next day. Many times they taste even better than the day they were made. And we're just trying to cut waste too, because, there are times when I've made like a huge batch of vegetable lasagna in a 9x13 pan. And I'm like, oh, we'll eat this. And it's like, no, we won't, but we're going to be so tired of this in 3 days. So I ended up sticking the rest in my freezer, which is a great thing to do as well. But, at some point it's going to get pushed back in the freezer and I'm going to forget about it. So,
and then it gets frosted.
Yeah,
and the worst is when you've waited too long to put it in the freezer. So it's not bad yet, but you're like, oh, if I'm going to put it in the freezer and don't remember that it's day 5 and don't eat it on the first day when I defrost it. So it's garbage. So yeah, I see what you're saying.
So you prep all these veggies and the grains on a Sunday, and then each day you just pick out what you want for that day. What do you do to change the flavor or the style of the food? If it's the same veggies and the same grain every day, do you do something special to it on each day?
Yeah, I try and mix it up. There's, as a chef, I know that there's different ways that we can prepare it. So, I mean, one day we might have a plant-based bowl for dinner. The next day I might do a stir fry. So that's different. And then
we're just going to take a little break here because I want to share with you that growth is something that happens for everyone and every business. And we've been going through a lot of personal and professional growth here at Plant Trainers, and we want to stay connected with you. That's why we're giving away our plant-based comfort food ebook that's worth $14.99 for free at our website at planttrainers.com, or by clicking the link in the show notes. Click on that, get on our newsletter, because we're going to be making some serious changes and you need to be aware of what's going on. We look forward to connecting with you there. And now back to the show.
The next day I might make maybe I'll roast the vegetables, and, so there's different ways that you can prepare the foods. So you can mix it up. And then obviously with different spices and seasonings, you can certainly play around with, many of the same type ingredients, but maybe one day I'm going to cook it more of an Indian style curry. And the other day I might do more of like a Japanese twist. So you can definitely play around with the ingredients that you use.
So you mentioned bowl. So I know that you're known for making the perfect bowl. So why don't you walk our listeners through some of that?
Yeah, I just, there's a part in my cookbook where I talk about how to build a plant-based bowl. And because I know that bowls are like a really approachable way for someone who's starting plant-based eating. It's a really fun way to try and incorporate different vegetables into your diet. So I have this really neat chart that I created, and it's broken up into all the different components of a plant-based bowl. So in my mind, there's 6 components. So the first component would be a green. So that's your lettuce, your spinach, arugula, whatever your favorite green is. Let's make that component number 1. Component number 2 would be your carb. So we're talking rice, barley, farro, beets, pasta. So choose your favorite carb for that you're craving that day. That's going to go with the green that you chose. So you have the green and the carb. Then you want to choose a protein. So I usually go with beans or lentils. I love those. They help bulk up salads and provide a lot of fiber for your body. Fourth is vegetables. So obviously your favorite vegetables, you can choose whatever you'd like: cauliflower, carrots, cabbage. And then you're going to want a sauce on top or a dressing. So like a miso dressing, a tahini dressing would be really good. Balsamic dressing. And then you want a topping, and topping is usually like your crunch. So any kind of nuts or seeds are really good on plant-based bowls. So that's 6 components. And if you just focused on greens, carbs, proteins, vegetables, sauce, and topping, it's an easy way to create a plant-based bowl.
I feel like it's all about the sauce.
Yeah.
It's all about the sauce. Like,
it's true. It brings it all together.
What's the easiest sauce that someone can make that's listening right now that is like super amazing and you can't believe how good it is because it's so silly easy to make? Is there something that exists like that?
Well, let me see if I can find it. It's actually the what came to my mind was the plant-based bowl that I put in my cookbook, actually. And
this is the book we're talking about.
Oh yeah,
so
easy
pretty.
plant-based cooking,
and I have it in front of me too. So that's the farro bowl. So let me just for the listeners, let me just tell you about this citrus dressing, because you're right, the dressing kind of brings it all together. And I really feel like in this recipe, the brightness and the acidity of the citrus dressing, just like it makes this dish so lively. So it's literally, it's fresh orange juice, fresh lemon juice, a little Dijon mustard and orange zest. And you're just going to sweeten it with a little maple syrup. It's got a little extra virgin olive oil, and then salt and pepper to taste. And it's so simple, but it really, it would go well even on just like a mixed green salad. It doesn't have to be a plant-based bowl. It's just a wonderful, bright, lively dressing.
Sounds delicious. And I'm sure you could just use water. If a listener doesn't use oil, they could just use water instead might be a little thinner, but use a little less water maybe. Yeah,
absolutely. That's a really good point.
Syrup. Done.
So,
pretty good. Sounds simple. Yeah.
What are some of your other favorites from the book?
Oh, goodness. Let's see. Let's go by chapter. So we start with beverages. So that's my Blucado.
That's like asking
who's your favorite child?
Yeah. Yeah, it's tough. But let's see. I just did a cooking demo yesterday, and I did the Blucado smoothie, from the cookbook. And I love this smoothie. It's really thick and creamy and filling. I'm a big breakfast person. So when I wake up in the morning, I usually wake up hungry. And this smoothie is super filling and satisfying. It's got, avocado in it, blueberries, banana, it has spinach. And I use almond milk and water as well. And it's really, really yummy. So I'd say that from the beverage section is probably one of my favorites. The salad section, definitely the Thai chopped salad. I love Thai food, and I love the fresh herbs that's found in Thai cuisine, like the basil and the mint and the cilantro. And this salad has all of those herbs in it, and it's really bright and crunchy and flavorful. As far as the entrees, I love the roasted cauliflower steak. I love it because it uses 1 head of cauliflower to make 2 servings. I use half of the cauliflower head to steam, and I mash it into a puree. And then the other half I use as cauliflower steaks, and it's served with the puree along with a fresh kale pesto. And the pesto kind of brings everything together. And then there's a snack section. There's side dishes. I won't bother you with that. But soups, definitely.
Bother us with miso guacamole.
Oh, that's right. Yes, I know you're excited about that one.
It sounds good. Like, guacamole is amazing, just guacamole, but throw some miso in.
Like, the depth of flavor that the miso adds and that like saltiness, it's so good. Like I serve it to people and they're like, what's different about this? Like they can't really figure out that there's this other dimension to it that the miso adds, and it's really, really nice.
So I haven't looked at the recipe, but if somebody normally makes guacamole and they add salt and pepper, if they're using the miso, I would guess, I could be wrong, they wouldn't use the salt from the salt and pepper because
Yeah.
the miso is so salty, right?
You are correct.
Yeah, you don't have to. You do not have to do that at all. That's what makes miso so wonderful.
And then I think I cut you off at desserts.
Yeah.
From a pastry chef, I mean, I can't imagine what you put together for desserts in this book.
Yeah, I was really happy with all these desserts. So, I mean, yes, I am a trained pastry chef and I did own a bakery and we did have some vegan items, but I definitely had never done like extensive vegan baking. So this was a really, challenging, but super fun section for me to write in the book. And I'm probably really the most thrilled with the caramel bread puddings. They're super easy to make. You just make a caramel sauce, but you're going to, instead of heavy cream, you're going to use coconut milk. And then you toss
these pictures, like Shush is flipping through the book, and I'm like, oh my, the pictures are pretty amazing.
No, I
thank you.
I won't make a recipe if there's no picture for the recipe. That's my standard rule.
It's kind of my rule too, actually. So, I'm a big lover of cookbooks. So, I have many and I use them as inspiration. And yeah, if there's not a photo, then it's kind of hard for me to get excited about making it. So I made sure that every recipe in this cookbook has a photo. And I'm really happy with how it turned out. So with the bread pudding, yeah, you're just using whole wheat bread. I added some raisins and you're just tossing it in a mixture of coconut milk and maple syrup and vanilla. You're going to flavor it with some cinnamon and nutmeg and some cornstarch to thicken. And you just bake it. It bakes really quickly and you serve it with the coconut caramel sauce and it's really good.
Awesome. So now that we're starving and watering, let's go back to some tips for the small households. And what are some grocery shopping tips that you could give for people who are shopping for two, not Costco?
Right. So in my case, I live in a household of two, and I have found what helps me is thinking about what I'm going to cook for the week and then always going with a shopping list. Because I find if I don't write what I want, then I'm kind of lost actually. And then I end up overbuying and buying things that, are going to go to waste. So that would probably be my biggest tip. It's going to help with your budget as well. And then as far as anyone who may be new to plant-based eating and, really wants to start cutting meat out of their diet, I would just don't even go to the meat section. I just force myself to not even look at what's there and just steer clear of any aisle that has, animal products that you might be tempted to eat.
Perfect. And what about at the farmer's market when things come in bunches? What are the tips for two? Can you say this bunch is too big? What kind of tips do you have for people there?
Well, sometimes vendors are open to breaking up bigger bunches. That's certainly a reasonable ask of a vendor for sure. You could do that. And yeah, I personally haven't had too much difficulty with big bunches at farmers markets. I found that a lot of the items are just loose and you can, pick and choose however much you'd like.
Perfect. What other tips or actionable steps might you have for the listeners?
So I've got 10 of my tips for starting a plant-based diet in my cookbook. And the first one is determine your motivation. And I think that's really important, not only with just, plant-based eating, but anything you do in life, you should determine your motivation. It's going to help you really think about how you want to go about it and with what attitude you want to start with. And it's just going to help clear and define what your goal is. And if your goal is to start eating more plants, then one of my other tips is there's no need to go cold turkey and go completely plant-based in a week. I would find that challenging. I didn't do that because I knew I wouldn't be able to sustain that. But start slowly would probably be my second tip. And then I would say stick to familiar flavors, things that you're accustomed to. So if, for instance, if you're a big fan of Indian cuisine, stick to, instead of chicken curry, do a chickpea curry. And then it'll still taste just as wonderful to you. And maybe make the chickpea curry with chicken broth instead of veggie broth, just to kind of help you with that transition where you might still crave that animal fat, and maybe that'll provide enough of a fat for it to still taste satisfying to you. And then eventually you can wean yourself off of that and move to veggie broth, and maybe eventually even just use water.
Great. And those are great tips. And people could find those tips in your book, which is Easy Plant-Based Cooking for Two. Chef Lei, where can our listeners reach out to you if they want to get more information, and where can they grab your book?
So there's a few places. I have a website. It's my name, leishishak.com. It's LEISHISHAK. You're welcome to go there. My email address is in the contact section. So I'm happy to receive and respond via email. I am on Instagram. Again, it's my name, @Lei Shishak. Feel free to contact me there. Facebook, I believe it's Lei Shishak Biz. It's my business page on Facebook. And then as far as where they can purchase my book, Amazon is probably the easiest for most people, but you can certainly get it at barnesandnobles.com and wherever you purchase your books. I'm sure your local bookstore would be able to purchase it for you.
Perfect. So we will link to all that in our show notes at planttrainers.com. And Chef Lei, thank you so much for being with us here on the Plant Trainers podcast. We appreciate you taking the time.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you all so much for listening to this edition of the Plant Trainers podcast. We want to make sure that you subscribe on iTunes, Google Play, iHeartRadio, Stitcher, or any other podcasting platform.
We really appreciate the feedback we receive from you. Every time we get a 5-star rating or review on iTunes from one of our fans, it really helps other people find us just like you did.
Thanks so much to our patrons. To become a patron, visit us at patreon.com/planttrainers. Even supporting us with $1 really makes a difference in the quality of the show.
And don't forget to connect with us on Instagram and Twitter. Our handle is @PlantTrainers. Like Plant Trainers on Facebook, join our newsletter, and check out our website at planttrainers.com for awesome recipes, a list of our services, and of course, our latest podcast.
We encourage you to email your questions to info@planttrainers.com so that we can help you improve your quality of life through nutrition and fitness.
So we hope we've inspired you today. Join us again next time. And have a healthy day. Or is that too corny?
It's a little cheesy.